Down by the Crown Hotel car park are the remains of a line of concrete dragon's teeth, facing an unseen enemy across the water meadows. They are anti-tank defences from 1940. Our exhibit shows the Battle of Blandford in detail. When war broke out, Blandford Camp became a training centre. Reservists were called up, and new recruits arrived to begin their army training. Living in tents at first until wooden huts were built to accommodate them, and one such a hut, built in the town, was to become Blandford's Scout Hut in happier days. On the 31st of May 1940, 68,000 men were brought back from Dunkirk in large and small ships. 245 of them stepped off a Thames dredger in Ramsgate. They were from the 2nd Battalion of the Dorset Regiment, and some of them were from the Blandford area. British people were shocked and downcast by the retreat, and the collapse of France on June the 2nd brought fear of an imminent German invasion to this island. 2 days later, on the 4th of June, Winston Churchill's call to arms was read out on the nightly news and heard with dread in many Blandford homes.
We shall defend our Ireland, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets.
Called Operation Sea Lion, the German invasion force was predicted to attempt to take control of the West Country, where they would use harbours in Devon and Cornwall to land tanks and thousands of troops to force England to surrender. Poole stood out as one likely landing site for invasion barges, as the rail and road bridges at Blandford offered German tanks a fast route north to the Bristol Channel to cut off the West Country and place it under German control. Desperate work began next day to defend the town against attack, and for the rest of June, Blandford's Home Guard worked with regular soldiers to install military defences, while local builders threw together anti-tank obstacles from any materials they could find. Since the outbreak of war, drivers and motorcyclists had to fit headlamp hoods or masks to their headlights. In fact, only shaded lights could be carried during blackout. One civil defence group, the ARP Wardens, enforced wartime regulations as part of their job. There were 6 ARP posts in the town where wardens were on duty during the night, checking blackout infringements and ready to help people to air raid shelters. Another civil defence force was the Fire Brigade, with their headquarters in North Place, and 18 auxiliary fire servicemen in Victoria Road. 200 more volunteer firefighters were later recruited from Blandford residents. First aid posts were set up involving 30 Blandford women and men, and the Women's Institute supplied tea and welfare services. So without ever handling a weapon, most Blandford families were involved in the defence of their town. Pamphlets were distributed to ready the town's residents for air raids. Shops sold anti-gas ointment, and businesses and private homes used tape to prevent glass showering their homes if a bomb blast shattered the windows. After the horrific effects of mustard gas seen in the Great War, no one went out without their gas masks. They were carried by everyone involved in the civil defence forces, including the town's telephone operators seen here, so it must have been a common sight to see them draped over hall chairs or the arm of a sofa in Blandford homes. Around strategic towns, Churchill had ordered the creation of a secret resistance army, and in 1940, men from one of its patrols dug an underground observation base in woods just off the road to Poole. Their 2-chambered hideout was fed with air by earthenware pipes and had a corrugated iron roof hidden under vegetation. These auxiliary patrol units were Churchill's creation and were sited about 10 kilometres apart and well hidden in woodlands. The men of the Spetsbury Patrol wore the uniform of the Home Guard, but were highly trained in covert warfare and sabotage. In fact, 7 of them later joined B Squadron 1 SAS and worked with French resistance behind enemy lines after D-Day. The young patrolmen were the sons of local farmers and a baker, and they were known as stay-behinds, a military term for a secret force highly trained in undercover and sabotage work. If the Germans invaded at Poole and came north to Blandford, the Spetsbury Patrol would deploy to their base and observe the tanks and troops as they passed, then attack, harass and sabotage them, coordinating with other local patrols. They carried revolvers and a machine gun and communicated by field radio or telephone. Their activities were so vital that they also carried suicide pills in case they were captured to protect the secrecy of the other patrols. The patrol motto was very much of those times: like Dad, keep mum. Somehow by July, Blandford was ready to defend itself and the West Country from falling to the Germans. The town lay on an anti-tank island. The Hammond Marsh banks of the Stour were lined with barbed wire fences. The railway embankments and cuttings already formed effective anti-tank defences. The railway arches provided a gap in those defences, so the meadows around them became a minefield. The floodplains west of the town bridge were also mined up to the deer park, where guns up on the milldown were trained on the lower ground to kill any tanks managing to get through. Dragon's Teeth formed a barrier to tanks coming through the water meadows. They ran from the Crown around the edge of the deer park and along the side of the cricket ground to the railway cutting. The park's ha-ha ditch now had a higher wall, the old park railings left in place to reinforce the concrete, and 2 pillboxes fixed their gaze across the park to the riverbank. Other pillboxes, roadblocks with sentries and gun emplacements protected all roads out of Blandford against German attempts to go north to the Bristol Channel. Constantly manned pillboxes flanked the road from the town bridge, with the bridge itself fitted with explosives to be detonated at a moment's notice. Ethel Harding had a florist shop, as well as her family home at number 23 West Street, opposite the new front line defences at the Crown. But when the Home Guard came one day, the Hardings' home itself became part of the front line. The soldiers put explosives and grenades in a bedroom and installed a machine gun trained down onto West Street. They also hid a detonator in Mrs. Harding's shop and told her how to blow up the bridge if she got a coded phone call from them. They taught her how to use the machine gun if German tanks or troops crossed the bridge and got past the pillboxes and sentries. Blandford's bridge, its river, the water meadows and West Street all lay waiting for the coming invasion. The Battle of Britain began 2 weeks later as Hitler fought for air superiority, believing that the RAF was near collapse. Throughout that summer, people watched the moons and high tides nervously. They expected the invasion to start with each one. But by the autumn, the RAF was still an effective force against the Luftwaffe. The weather window closed, and without air superiority, Hitler decided Operation Sea Lion was unviable. So the stay-behinds were never needed on British soil, and our hasty defences were never tested. But a few of them remain as symbols of those desperate times. The Dragon's Teeth, the tops of the pre-war railings entombed in a wall, and there's one surviving pillbox at the end of a private garden. It's cold and dark inside, the slit window fixed on the meadows outside. The concrete ceiling shows graining from the wooden shuttering used in the pillbox's hasty construction, along with the initials GW, George Wilson, the local man who built it in the fearful summer of 1940.